Welcome to the Solid Signal podcast for the week of December 19th, 2022. This is the almost the last podcast of the year. Next week will be the last podcast of the year, and I'll take that one for a little bit of wrap up. The subject for this week's podcast is All I Want for the Holidays Is. And if you are thinking of that Mariah Carey song, you're probably not that far off, or some of the other holiday music out there. But this is my wish for the holidays and beyond. And we'll talk about some forecasts for 23, next week or the week after. This is just something I'm thinking about for now. All I want for the holidays this year is good customer service. And I know that sounds a little bit weird, but let me explain. There are some companies out there who are doing good customer service, and I'm going to maybe talk about them at the end. But first, I want to talk about some companies that have really maybe not stepped up this year, and most of them are media companies. This has been a really rough year for media companies, and I guess one way of looking at this is that we had it really good for a really long time. When streaming first started, the perception was that it wasn't that expensive to do, and it was just basically a printing press for money. So you could do almost anything, and you could spend almost any amount. And the goal was to try to capture people's attention, not necessarily to capture their money. So it was all about how many subscribers were coming in and not how much money was coming in. This is the mindset that allowed Netflix to spend, hundreds of millions of dollars on original content that frankly wasn't that good, but they were really trying to get that attention from people. And because they were doing it, then you saw other companies like Amazon and like HBO try to do the same thing, produce a lot of original content for their streaming channels without a real clear understanding about whether or not that was going to pay dividends long term. And so we got a lot of excellent content, and we got a lot of content that we probably wouldn't have gotten otherwise, very expensive stuff. And, the checkbooks were open. There was a while there where I was actually considering pitching a series to Netflix, not because I had a terribly good idea, but from the looks of it, it seemed like they would give a series order to almost anybody for almost anything. So why wouldn't I try? Well, those days ended in 2022. And what was left was a very customer-unfriendly scenario. And it broke out a bunch of different ways. For example, companies like Paramount started licensing their content to other apps instead of keeping it captive. In other words, and not going to surprise a lot of you that I'm talking about Star Trek here, for example, but there are about 14 Star Trek movies. And instead of having Paramount Plus be your one home for all of them, the app started licensing some of those movies out to other streaming apps in order to try to make money. This is a customer-unfriendly decision if you're the kind of person who wants to, binge all the Star Trek movies at once. And Disney, for their part, they really weren't doing this. You go one place and find all your Star Wars content right on Disney Plus. But Paramount Plus decided to just kind of spread out the wealth, and that was very customer service unfriendly. Another customer service unfriendly move this past year has been advertiser support. Now, I know they're trying to tell you, we're adding advertiser support so more people can afford the app and what have you, but really, it's just something that people don't want. They're just being forced into it because the prices of these apps keep going up and up and up. You're going to pay $20 for a 4K capable subscription on Netflix, actually a little bit more, $20 a month plus, and that's kind of ridiculous. And honestly, other apps like HBO Max aren't that far off. And if you look at what Discovery Plus is doing, combine that with what HBO Max is doing, it just makes you worry that will the combined Discovery Plus HBO Max app be over $25 a month? It's not inconceivable. Very customer service unfriendly, adding these advertiser support tiers because, it just allows them to jack up the prices for the non-advertiser supported tiers. Another thing, that the king of bad customer support, of course, this year has to be Discovery Networks and the stuff they've been pulling with the HBO Max app. I get it. this app was bleeding cash. And if you listen to what they're saying, it was running a $4.3 billion deficit every year that needed to be dealt with in order to right the ship. I get it. I totally get it. But on the other hand, it was a really good source for great content. And all of a sudden, you found that series were getting slashed left and right. Whole movies were getting canceled. And stuff was being taken off the app, was actually owned by Discovery Networks and is being shopped out, licensed out to other apps in the same kind of model that Paramount Plus is doing to try to make a little bit more money. Again, customer unfriendly. Profit friendly, sure. And you got to understand that these apps would disappear if the profit went away eventually, but it seems like this is not a great way of doing it. And it's sad to see this kind of customer unfriendly attitude move over into streaming because, like I said, we had it so good for so long, and it had to end at some point. But this is not necessarily a way to do it. It reminds me of the old days of Blockbuster Video, where there was a time 20 years ago, Blockbuster Video was the place to go. We'll call it almost 30 years ago at this point. But it got to the point that they were managing things so badly, and they had so little confidence from customers. They had such bad customer service that people started going over to Netflix, which at the time was a disc-only company, if you remember. So let me clear this up. So instead of going to a video store and getting something today, people were literally willing to wait a week to get the same disc just because Blockbuster's customer service was so bad. And how did Blockbuster respond? By making their customer service even worse, by messing around with the rules for late fees and redefining what they called a new release so that the content on the new release wall was 2-3 years old. And people just went more and more to Netflix. What happened to Blockbuster, we all know. It disappeared. And I can't help but thinking that a lot of these streaming apps should be looking at Blockbuster's example, because if you make it harder and harder, less and less valuable to use your apps, well, people are not going to stay with them. And I can't help thinking that cutting customer service, cutting content, increasing prices is not a great formula for success. I'm not the executives for these apps, so I can't say for sure what's going on, but it just seems to me common sense says that they're not going to succeed this way, and it's going to look very, very ugly in the coming year. On the other hand, I have to say there are a few companies that have been doing excellent customer service in 22. After about 5 years of not doing a whole lot with the satellite product, since DirecTV was spun off from corporate parent AT&T, they have been on a tear, adding new services, increasing picture quality, consolidating satellite signals on the 3 primary satellites so that it's easier to get more content with a single satellite dish or with just a 3-location dish. They are making things better and better, and I have to tell you, just a little bit of a look into 23. It's going to get better and better as well, not just for businesses. We've already seen some renewed interest in business in 22, but we're going to see some new stuff for residential customers as well. That's really going to make a big difference in the way that people use the product. Late 22 saw the introduction of Stream Saver, which is a great idea, and you gotta wonder why they didn't do it sooner, where it automatically will switch from the satellite feed to the streaming feed if available during times of rain fade. Rain fade is rare, but if it does happen, this is what's going to happen, is you're just going to switch over to the streaming feed automatically and continue watching. Great customer service. And of course, I have to stick in a plug for Signal Connect, part of the Signal Group, of which the Solid Signal podcast is a member, because we have had our best year ever in Signal Connect. And why? Because we've got dedicated folks who are taking care of customers, who are finding ways to really show how important good customer service is. A lot of the folks who come to Signal Connect are RV and marine users, and these are folks who do not have the time for the nonsense that they'll find from regular old call centers. Plus, they have special needs that Call centers just don't understand. And the Signal Connect folks take great care of them. But we also take great care of residential customers, just plain old regular satellite TV, cellular customers. And if you're having any problem with your home entertainment, I urge you to give them a call, because you can learn what great customer service is all about. All I want for the holidays is for other companies to really take the Signal Connect example of great customer service. It does pay off in time. Spend the time cultivating and taking care of the people that you care about, your customers, and it will come back to you. It's pretty easy to see. Anyway, that's about it for the podcast this week. This podcast, as I said, is sponsored by Solid Signal and Signal Connect. Give these folks a call. Shop at solidsignal.com for everything you need to live your best digital life, or call 888-233-7563. That's 888-233-7563. And as I said, you can experience fantastic customer service for yourself. That's it for the Solid Signal podcast this week. As always, like, subscribe, leave a comment. Makes me look good to my bosses. And I will see you all again next week. As it is a holiday situation, I'll probably be recording the podcast on Friday, as I tend to do that. And so it will be available probably a little bit earlier if you look on the YouTube channel or anywhere that great podcasts are found. Have a great week and a great holiday, no matter which one you celebrate.